Welcome to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and this is going to be a recap for NAL day number 6 of the 2022 season stage number 2. This is going to be a quick one, hopefully. Okay, Parabellum versus Space Station, first game of the day, 8-7 victory for Parabellum. A little bit of a surprise, but not a massive surprise. It was a very close game. We go to Skyscraper, and I believe this is the first Skyscraper we've seen this stage thus far. Community prediction were slightly in favor of Parabellum, so I guess by this metric, it even was not a surprise that Parabellum narrowly won. And I am actually curious, I can't quite remember who pushed overtime. It was Space Station that pushed overtime, and then they even had the lead, but then Parabellum cleaned it up with the final 2 rounds of the game. And looking at the stats, much more of team effort coming out from Parabellum than in most of their other games. And finally, this might be the very first game where it's not Gunner and or Blaz in the top spot, and most of their games, I think it's Gunner and Blaz in the top 2 spots. So it's still Blaz number 2 here, but we see Penguin, Eska, and Kool-Aid all really close, and then Gunner, in fact, being the lowest rated player, as well as their bottom frag, but not by a massive margin, obviously. And then pretty well a community, or well, a team effort from Space Station coming out as well. 3 players on 11 kills, but Bosco and Skies having more of a rough game. And I mean, it looks like this is where they came up short. Skies has had a few rough games this stage, and I mean, the team as a whole still seems to be figuring things out. We'll see what they do from here. Okay, second game of the day, we have Dark Zero versus TSM, and this one, it doesn't mean a whole lot. Well, I mean, in terms of points, it means exactly the same, but in terms of the actual gameplay, TSM had to sub out Geo, who was pretty much their best player of the stage, for Gotcha, their coach, and so basically a free win for Dark Zero, 7-3. They go to Chalet. I do wonder if they would have gone to Chalet if they hadn't made the substitution. I don't know if this is just, let's just go to whatever map, or maybe a less structured map so that Gotcha can just kind of do whatever. I don't think it really ended up helping his frags out, and obviously it didn't get TSM the win. It's a pretty good map for each team, so I don't know. Maybe they would have gone here anyways. And 25% for Dark Zero. This is obviously before the substitution, and TSM, their vote is usually inflated, but again, I'm sure lots more people would have voted for Dark Zero if they knew that was going to be the case. And everybody getting pretty well decked on TSM, other than Merc doing pretty well, and especially Gotcha. And I mean, what do you expect for a coach subbing in pretty much last minute? And then over here it is Canadian on top with Hyper on the same KD, and then it's actually Pambazoo on the bottom, and that might be the first time we've seen that this stage. Pambazoo has been statistically by far the best player on Dark Zero thus far, and this will maybe go a decent bit of the way to equalizing things. Okay, let's go to game number 3. And yeah, XSET versus Sonics, another round 15 game. So I mean, if you're doing predictions, this might have been a heartbreaker, or this you might have sweated out and got your prediction correct. I picked Sonics, so unfortunate for me, right? Yeah, we go to Oregon, and this is the same map that XSET 7-0'd Sonics on last stage, but that was the minimum number of rounds played. This is now the maximum number of rounds played. How far we've come. 68%, about 2/3 of voters in favor of XSET there, and I think it makes sense, all things considered. And I think a decent bit of that has to do with the result from last stage. These teams were, I think, in a similar place coming into the day in terms of what we've seen on the in this stage, and you know, maybe a little bit more in favor of XSET. So that might even be a little bit more skewed, but yeah, probably I would have given XSET maybe a little bit of a leg up, but maybe not. And it is DS Lucas going big in this game. Nobody else putting up a positive rating on XSET, and it is Rexon and Grixer on top here for Sonics, Super in the middle, and then Yeti and Kansan down here. And Yeti hasn't had the greatest stage, and this isn't a terrible game by any means, but Kansan, who's been having quite a good stage, has a pretty bad game here. And then Rexon, I think, was pretty mediocre this stage thus far, and Grixer pretty good. So I mean, just to speak on some trends there, I suppose. And I guess also looking at the entry, not super significant, and it was actually just 1 in favor of XSET, and that's actually how many rounds they won by. XSET went +1, and they got one more round than their opponents. And I guess that'll do it here. Let's go to 4th game. Yeah, Astralis versus Oxygen. So this was a rematch from the Charlotte Major, the semifinals. Astralis destroyed Oxygen. It was a 7-3, 7-1, 14-4 in terms of round count, and now we see some revenge coming out for Oxygen. We go to Theme Park, and these are probably the 2 best theme park teams in North America, maybe even in the world. And I think after this, it seems like Oxygen is probably just the uncontested number 1 on Theme Park. And sure, you know, maybe some teams are really, really good on it and they just don't play on it much, but Oxygen is on a like 6-win streak versus, I guess, you know, just tier 1 teams. We're talking about mostly NA teams, and then a few teams that 1 or more teams that they played at the at the most recent major, at the Charlotte major. And, you know, it was close. You know, Astralis said if they just got one more round, and I think they were pretty close to winning 1 or 2 rounds, they could have gone overtime, could have won the game, but Oxygen pulls out the victory. So about, you know, close to 2/3 in favor of Oxygen here. That's probably warranted. I think Astralis has been a little bit underrated this stage. Their performance has, I think, pretty obviously been hampered by COVID and the circumstances surrounding that. And I think they're a better team than how many points they have would suggest. So we'll see if they can still get more points on the board. It's looking kind of dangerous for them. They might not be going to Berlin for the major, but it's still on the table. So looking at the stats for this game, it is Forrest on top, as he very often is. Iconic on the bottom, as he very often has been this stage. Pretty brutal for him. DP Fire also not having a very good stage, although I think it was just in the most previous game, these were the top 2 players in terms of rating, and then J90 and Shuttle kind of in the middle here, and then it is Laxing on top. So I think Laxing used to have several bad games on Theme Park, and now he's on top by a pretty massive margin. Newer's finally not having a very flashy game, still going 1.0, +1, -1, not dreadful. The cost is maybe a bit low, but I'm sure he contributed plenty to this victory. And then Vertical right here in the middle on identical rating. Foxy and Dream doing a little bit worse, but I mean, they still got it across the line, so good for them. And Oxygen is looking pretty good going forward. I think very, very likely to attend the upcoming major. And I think final game of the day, right? Yeah, Beast Coast versus Mirage. Finally, a victory for Mirage. They get 5 rounds on the board, just like they did against Space Station and Oxygen, and then they go on to win the next 2 rounds. You know, win 1 round, secure a point, win the next round, secure the other 2 points. And so second Skyscraper, right? And this is actually the second time in a row Beast Coast has lost to Mirage, both times on the season, and this doesn't eliminate their chances to go to the major, but it certainly hurts them. They would be on 12 points if they got all 3 in this game. They'd be up there with Oxygen on 13 and Xset on 12, and they'd be very likely to go. But now they probably need to win all 3 of their games, if not like 2 of their games, and then maybe an overtime point, whatever. They need quite a few more points to actually secure they're going to the major. And yeah, I mean, a big shock, 95%, not the most against Mirage we've seen like 98s and 97s, and I think it makes sense with Mirage putting up decent numbers in their last 2 games, and with them having beaten Beast Coast last stage. Yeah, you might even give them a little bit more credit. If I was playing with these odds on like betting, I would certainly bet on Mirage, a 20-1 against the team that they beat last stage. Yeah, you got to take a bet like that. And it is Sweater doing quite well, with Surf kind of backing him up, and then Anthony and Slash having a pretty brutal game, especially Slash here. And then on Mirage, it is Kento, and I guess even Melted and Marmalade doing pretty well, bringing their team across the line. Benji doing kind of mediocre, and then Nick's not doing especially poorly, just -1, +1 is pretty fine, just a 0.89 rating. And yeah, that's all of the games. I guess I banged this out pretty quickly, right? So let's take a look at the standings. Let's just go through really quick. Okay, so I'll go down the line, top to bottom. First to 10th, we have Oxygen, Xset, Sonics, TSM, Dark Zero, Beast Coast, Astralis, Parabellum, Space Station, and Mirage. Going into the final 3 play days, every team has a shot to make it to the major. Mirage, it's like 1 in a quadrillion or whatever, some ridiculous odds. It's very unlikely, and we can pretty much assume it's not going to happen. Astralis, Parabellum, and Space Station, it is looking quite grim for them. I think maybe Astralis has an easier-ish schedule. Obviously, no games are free this stage. No games are even especially easy, but I want to say they have one of the easier ones, so I think they still have a decent shot to make it. Pretty uphill battle, I think, for Parabellum and Space Station especially, and then even Dark Zero and Beast Coast on 9 point, not in the best spot. You probably are going to need to get minimum between 15 and 17 points. So I guess absolute minimum, maybe 15 will get you to the major. But last stage, I want to say it wasn't it 17 points Xset was on, and they were in 4th place. So a little bit more competitive, a little bit more spread out are the points this stage. So maybe it'll only be a 15 or 16 point threshold, but I imagine that is probably about where it's going to be. And then we have Sonics and TSM in a pretty decent position, only a single point ahead of Dark Zero and Beast Coast, only 2 points ahead of these teams, but every point is so significant now. TSM, if Geo is not able to come back, that might just completely eliminate their chances to go to the major. But if he's back, they've been pretty good this stage, and I imagine they will make it. And then Sonics probably as well. It's probably these 4 teams, but there's still plenty of room for at least one of these teams to sneak in, and probably more likely than anything Dark Zero or Beast Coast, but we'll have to see. We'll see what happens there. And I don't know, I don't think I'll go through the stats this time in order to keep this video as brief as it is, right? A like and a subscription would be appreciated. Feel free to comment if you have anything to say, and with all of that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video.